Have you ever noticed how our minds replay the same moment long after it's over? It's like the memory refuses to sit down and be quiet, even when our whole spirit is ready to move on. Today, we are breaking that loop. Detachment begins with one clear decision. Detachment isn't even about coldness. It really isn't. It's just about clarity. It begins the moment we decide, hold on, my peace is worth way more than this. That decision shifts our brain into a new direction, away from continuously thinking and towards healing. That's the best place to be. So one clear decision basically reduces mental conflicts. Our brain works best when it knows the assignment. So when we go back and forth, our mind stays stuck in survival mode, scanning for answers from someone or something who can no longer provide them. So make detachment gentle and simple. Decide what you're no longer going to participate in and decide what behaviors you will no longer tolerate. You have to be militant, honestly. Decide what future version of you deserves next. Our nervous system settles when our decisions are firm and direct. We stop negotiating with the past, trying to replay it, and make sense of it. And instead, you know what? We start actually creating emotional space for new possibilities. So detachment definitely isn't a one-time action. It's a constant shift, but in the right direction. So once a decision is made, even small choices become easier. And do you know what I found works for me really well is praying and thanking God for closing the doors that weren't meant for me. Honestly, I just see it as protection. My next point is create distance from the things that trigger old emotions. So our brain is associative, right? It likes to link people, memories, places, songs, objects, even routines with emotions. So when we're trying to detach, triggers can really just pull us back into old feelings fast. So detachment requires creating gentle distance from anything that reactivates the emotional bond. So we don't need to delete our whole life. That's not what I'm saying. But I am saying we need to soften the triggers that reduce contact and avoid places tied to that season. So unfollow or mute social media accounts that no longer serve you. Put away objects that pull you backwards or have you reminiscing. Change your daily routine if you have to. Neuroscience shows that emotional triggers lose power when they're no longer reinforced. So every time you avoid a trigger, the neural pathway weakens. And every time you revisit it, the pathway strengthens again. So distance really actually is a form of protection in this specific context. You're giving your mind time to heal, you're allowing your emotions to stabilize, and you're just like giving yourself more time to live instead of being stuck in the past. Which flows into the next point amazingly, which is let yourself feel the loss without getting stuck in it. Honestly, detachment doesn't mean you stop caring. It doesn't, you're human. But it does mean you allow yourself to feel the emotions without letting them control your direction. Your brain processes emotional pain the same way it processes physical pain. So it activates the same neural regions. So sadness, disappointment, loneliness, they're not weaknesses. They're like part of how your mind releases attachment. But there's a difference between feeling an emotion and like just living inside it constantly. So instead of suppressing your feelings, you can just name them. You can say, do you know what, this actually hurts. I do feel confused. And I feel like naming emotions reduces activity in the amygdala, which is the part of the brain that amplifies distress. So that's why acknowledging what you feel helps you calm down a lot faster. Give your emotions space, but also give them boundaries too. Feel them, honor them, then gently return to the present moment. Healing doesn't happen by avoiding pain. Honestly, it doesn't. But it happens by allowing it to pass through you without letting it define who you are. Next is rebuild your sense of self after the break, right? So when you've been attached to a person, a situation, or future you imagined, a part of your identity becomes tied to it. So when it ends, like naturally, you don't just lose the attachment, unfortunately. You temporarily lose a version of yourself. But detachment requires rebuilding your sense of self. This is where faith can become really grounding. When everything shifts, God reminds you that your identity isn't built on people or circumstances, it's built on who he created you to be. And that is beautiful. So psychologically, rebuilding identity means reconnecting with what makes you feel alive, what you actually enjoy, what you value, and who you are outside of the attachment, who you're becoming, basically. Like, just start small, but start. Do things that make you feel like you again, even if they're so simple. Like, your brain forms new pathways through new experiences. Every time you choose yourself, your identity strengthens. So you're not going back to who you were, you're literally going forward into who you're meant to be. So my next point is accept what you can't change so your mind can rest. And it's quite sad because one of the hardest parts of detaching, I basically feel, is accepting the truth that you may not have wanted to face. But beloved, we are here. Your brain loves closure, logic, and clear answers. So when something ends without clarity, the mind can just keep looping, trying to solve what just can't be changed. So acceptance just stops that mental loop, and it's needed. Acceptance doesn't mean you agree with what happened. And it doesn't mean you have feelings towards what happened, but it means you acknowledge reality. So your nervous system can finally stop fighting it. You can repeat calming truths like, you know what, I can't change the past. I accept what is out of my control. And my peace matters more than the outcome, because it really does. Neuroscience shows that acceptance basically reduces stress responses and it helps the brain shift out of survival mode. So your mind stops resisting and starts adapting, which is what's needed. Acceptance isn't giving up. It's not, but it's understanding that you still have to move forward. And it frees your emotional energy so you can invest in your future and yourself again and stop being like stuck in the past. And all this stuff ties really nicely into like a Bible story, which I just find really interesting. And it's about Lot's wife. I think when they were like told to flee from the city they were in, and God said, don't look back. And when she looks back, she turned into like a pillar of salt. And that lives in my mind rent free, because it just makes me think, actually, like, yeah, we're not going to turn into a pillar of salt if we look back, but it does bring into like the thought process of how much damage are we doing to ourselves by looking back and staying in our past when we're instructed to move forward. So I'm gonna let that sit with you for a bit. Okay, so another way to detach and let go is to replace your constant reflection on the past with grounding routines. So when you're trying to detach, your brain often slips into constant reflection. So I mean, like, you could be replaying conversations that had happened and trying to understand why. I feel like reflection in the past may feel productive, but actually it's trapping your mind. It's trapping your mind in the past. And you probably need to get some routines to bring you back to the present. These can be as simple as doing a morning stretch, going on a short walk, tidying one small area, a 5-minute like journaling practice, reading something uplifting, going out with a friend like every week, and just really grounding in the present moment. So these routines actually engage the prefrontal cortex, which is the rational calming part of your brain, which reduces emotional reactivity. So grounding actions don't necessarily erase the past, but they anchor you in the now, and I feel like that's when true healing can begin. The more consistent your routine, the more your brain starts to understand again that actually you're safe and you're moving forward for bigger and better things. And that ties into focusing on the future you're building and not the past you're leaving. And that's a mindset I try to have most of the time. So a powerful part of detaching is giving your mind something new to move towards, right? So your brain, our brain, hates empty space. So if we don't intentionally fill that space with a future vision, it will keep returning to the past. So start imagining a version of you who is healed, calm, focused, and grounded. Visualization activates the same neural pathways as real experiences, which helps your brain feel safer when you're trying to move forward. We can ask ourselves, you know what does our next season even look like? Who am I becoming? And what habits actually even support my peace? What does a stable, healthy life even feel like? The more you think about your future, the less emotionally charged your past becomes. And I feel like our brain will just follow the focus. Yeah, focus on what's next. And your emotional energy naturally shifts away from what's behind you. So you're not running from your past. We're just more focused on the life we're heading towards. Something else that helps is breaking the patterns that kept you attached. So attachments often form through patterns and the attention you received, the validation you craved, and the routines you may have fallen into, or the hope you held on to. We've all been there, it's okay. But to detach, you need to gently break those patterns. This isn't about blaming yourself or wishing things were different. It's more about understanding what kept you emotionally tied so you don't recreate the same dynamic ever again. So you can ask, like, hold on, what was I actually attached to? The person, the potential, it probably was the potential to be honest, the comfort, or even like the attention, the connection, or is it like a fantasy you create in your head? That psychologists basically call this insight-based healing, and that's when awareness breaks emotional loops. So when you understand the real root of the attachment, I feel like the emotional hold weakens. In my case, that's how I feel like my brain has worked. So we kind of stop longing for what really actually wasn't truly serving you and breaking patterns. Yeah, but it doesn't happen overnight though, it really doesn't. But every moment you seek for more clarity, you have more distance, and I think eventually you reach freedom. Okay, so next is you need to rebuild your emotional boundaries over time. And it does take time, but you do need to get some boundaries up. A big part of detaching is strengthening the boundaries that were blurred, ignored, or just crossed, that never should have been crossed. Your emotional boundaries are like internal lines that protect your peace. So when those lines get weak, attachments grow stronger, even unhealthy ones. I know, it's so sad we've been there, but rebuilding boundaries can be so simple. Saying no without having to over-explain yourself, or not responding instantly. Like, limit the access people have to you, honestly, because sometimes you need the time and energy to recognize when something doesn't feel safe. Choose yourself, even when it feels uncomfortable. Choose yourself. Neuroscience shows that when you reinforce boundaries, your self-worth circuitry strengthens. So your brain basically starts recognizing that actually, do you know what, your needs matter too, and it'll adjust your emotional responses accordingly. So boundaries don't make you cold. No, they make you clear. They make you stand on business, and slowly your emotional world becomes safer. And you know what? The attachment then loses its power over you. Okay, so this next point is super important. Is understanding that closure comes from you. Comes from you, not them, which is one of the hardest truths in detachment. It's realizing that you may never actually get an apology, an explanation, or the clarity you wanted. And it has to be okay. Waiting for closure keeps your brain tied to the past because it stays in problem-solving mode, trying to make sense of something that may never ever make sense. And do you know what? True closure, I feel, is internal. It happens when you decide, you know what, I don't even need their words or their sorry to heal. I'm just going to do it. Peace is actually more important than understanding a situation. Do you know what psychologists call this? Self-generated closure. And it's when you create your emotional closure by yourself. So you're no longer hoping for a moment that may never come. That in itself is freeing. You release yourself, okay? Closure is not something they give you. It's not something many situations can even give you, but it's something that you choose for yourself and for your peace and for your own well-being. And my final point is step into the next season with faith and confidence. Detachment isn't just about letting go. It's about stepping into what God is preparing you for next. Every single ending creates space and opportunity for growth. Every release opens room for alignment. Every detachment basically shifts you closer to the person you're becoming. You don't need to know every detail of the future. You actually don't. You just need to trust that you are being guided towards something so much better, healthier, and more stable. So from a neuroscience perspective, hope basically activates the brain's reward system, giving you energy, clarity, and emotional strength. And faith does the same thing, right? It does. It stabilizes your nervous system and keeps you grounded. You let go not because you're losing something, no, but because you're making space for peace, for joy, for yourself. And that's the life I feel like you're always meant to have. You're not starting over. You're starting fresh with some wisdom and clarity, which is amazing. Thank you, Christ Jesus, for that gift you've given us. And if you do feel that you are struggling to let go or detach from a situation or a person, please remember that you can pray. Like, read the Bible. There's nothing new under the sun. There isn't. And I think the more I'm delving into the Bible, the more I'm realizing, like, you will be fine. Whatever you're going through, you will be fine. God has you. The Holy Spirit has you. You'll be fine. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, comment, share, subscribe, and yeah, thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.